Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari. Today we have with us Miss Laureen LeClerc. How are you doing, Laureen?
Hey, Payman, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me. But
No, welcome. Sorry, go ahead.
it's Mrs. LeClaire, and I strongly stand on
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. LeClaire, right at the front of the hour, I have to give an apology. Mrs. LeClaire and I, we've been in communication for the last 5 months, but I just never got around to getting her on. I kept delaying everything. So we managed to do this. At least we got it in by 2024. So here we are. Um, Mrs. LeClaire, you have a pretty fascinating story, and we're going to go into different sort of avenues. But I thought maybe to get started, if you could tell the audience about where you were born, where you were raised, where you're living now, but and specifically how you've seen Canada change over the last few decades.
All right, but you can call me Lorene. I don't need courtesy, whatever titles, whatever that is. But if somebody's going to use one, I want Mrs. So we'll start with that. I was born in Drayton Valley to my to Martha and Virgil Dahl. So that's my maiden name. And in 1965, Drayton Valley is a boom oil town of Alberta. Um, I I've lived in Alberta my entire lifetime. I worked in the oil field. I dropped out of high school, grade 10. After grade 10, I I was in a previous marriage. I have one natural child, three. My husband has three children. Um, I don't know. I'm a journeyman mechanic, a class one truck driver. I did 10 years of oil field administration work. And then I went to work in the post office. Worst thing I ever did for myself, really. Jeez, those people are nuts. But, and that's pretty much it. I don't know. I grew up in a world where I just had freedom as a child. I could leave the house in the morning and be gone all day. Me and the kids from the community, a small little hamlet called Violet Grove is where I lived, just a few miles out of Drayton Valley. Where I live now is Alder Flats. It's a small little hamlet that's on the other side of the river from Violet Grove. But basically in line going north and south. It's not Drayton Valley, just north of us. So I don't know. I grew up. My mom and dad weren't rich people. My dad was a road builder. Mm, My mom worked alongside of him. Just a normal. we weren't. We were we were not well off by no means, but I was never hungry. I was happy. Dad was a trapper. I don't know. We picked berries. Mom's native, Cree native. So I was a hard worker. We were all hard workers, my whole family, and just honest living. And I never realized that. Well, I always kind of knew that government were liars. But I was just living my life, trying to get to a spot where I had a home, and then I got to a place where I had a home, and I was living a happy life. And then somebody tried power tripping over me, and that just doesn't work for me. I don't I don't need anybody power tripping over me for any reason, under any circumstances. No one is my boss. I don't have a leader. I don't follow anyone. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that somebody would at 55 years old start telling me what I have to do. It's anyways, that's my story where it started. And it just went wrong because I refused to comply with people that just prove that you have that authority to do that to me. And no one could. they just kept saying, well, because I said so, because I'm giving the orders. Well, who the fuck are you? Excuse my language. But I do cuss because I get so mad. It's so wrong what's going on in the world. The corruption in government. And they just watch it day in and day out, and they argue about who's more corrupt. Well, the whole bunch of them are. They steal. They're liars by default. Politicians are liars by default. And then they're cheats and thieves and like human slave overseers by choice. But what are we doing with these people in there? I can't stand liars, and I detest hypocrisy, and that, so I keep to myself. I've always been like that, but I just got to a point where I just couldn't stand back and watch the lying anymore, and the hypocrisy, and because it was hurting kids, it was hurting little kids. Anyways, that's it.
So we have from the audience, Prairie, who's actually in the prairies in Saskatchewan. She says, "Good afternoon, hello, Prairie." Um, Seems like Gary's a big fan of yours, and I think Prairie's. She made a joke. She says she also swears a lot, so you're in good company.
Well,
Um,
I don't think that, like some people get really offended by from hearing words, but I don't believe that swearing is nearly as offensive as some corporate pig sitting at a table talking about depopulation. That's fucking offensive. It's terrible that this is who's running our country. So,
I was wrong, actually. Prairie's in Manitoba, but I have a question for you. You said you're in a small hamlet, and you're talking about people telling you what to do. It's in the context of COVID. Did the other people in your hamlet, were they as strong-minded as you and resisted it, or did they just comply?
oh no, they weren't strong as me, and that's what the problem, where I was like, holy, there's like, the hell is going on? Like, how can this happen way out here? It's like, what the hell happened to everybody? And because and on the most part, it had to do with the school. I read the public health orders, and well, first I started right like in April of 2020, 2 weeks after, 2 weeks to flatten this curve. Justin Trudeau stood in front of God and everybody, said we would never get back to normality until there was a vaccine, and I was like, oh, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. And so, and then 6 days after that, there was the Manitoba shooting, the RCMP disguise, and I was like, oh, oh yeah, because I used to maintain RCMP vehicles. There's no good reason why that man should have had that vehicle, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And so yeah, so then I was shocked that a small community like ours would go along with all of what was going on. And I looked into the public health orders, into their spreadsheet where it had the severe outcomes, and I was like, well, obviously there's just old people dying in their shit in old homes, old folks' homes. No one's taking care of them. They're not getting the emergency care to even keep them alive. They're just dying. Some of them didn't even get to the hospital. And I was like, why are people going along with what they're hearing on the TV? Because that's not the numbers. And in April, it was like 300 old people. I was like, old people die. And then I started thinking, well, this is this is the baby boomers killing off the baby boomers. It's terrible. It's a baby boomer call is all it is. And they knew that was coming for forever, because all of my friends as I was growing up were much older than me. I remember lots of times having the conversation about the baby boomers, like what are we going to do when the baby boomers get old? And everybody's like, well, we don't know what's going to happen when the baby boomers get old, but now we know what happened. It was planned. They always knew they were all going to start dying at the same time. Anyways, that's my theory. And I was like, well, these people, this is what they're saying on TV is not, and the news is not what's happening in the reality that I'm seeing in my town. And I call it a town, but it's just my town. And it's not the reality of what I see in Dina Henshaw's spreadsheet. So I don't know what everybody's doing. So then it was, the school was going back to school in September, and everybody was in an uproar because the kids were going to have to wear masks in school. So I looked at the public health orders again, and that's not what it said. It said some really bizarre things. So bizarre, but like kids couldn't sit facing each other anymore. They had to sit like in rows because some thinks an airborne virus can't jump over the back of a kid's head. I was like, who the fuck thinks this shit out? And then there was the Dina Henshaw dropped runny nose off of the list of symptoms for children because kids get runny noses, and they were having to shut the schools down because of kids were getting runny noses. So there was different symptoms of COVID for adults than there was from little children. I was like, how can that be when a coronavirus is like the cold is a coronavirus? Everybody knows that, or they should, anyways. And so then it just kept getting more and more bizarre to me. So then I wrote my counselor, a letter, and I hand delivered it. My counselor, my UCB counselor for Wetaskiwin County, is a member of my community, and he's a general store owner, and he's I could say his name, but then I have to swear too, so I'm not going to actually say it. But he's also a long-standing member, because all small little communities all started out with a few core families, and his is one of those core families within the community of Alder Flats. And anybody can check it out, Zone 7, Wetaskiwin County. And so he got voted in 2012. So I wrote him a letter, and I hand delivered it to his workplace. And he was busy, and so there was a young girl who I knew from the post office, and she said, I'll give it to him. So I'm just assuming that he got it. And basically I was just saying, I just told him, is, a house that's divided over this house, because he's related to everybody around here. It's like a single branch family tree here. That I'm not on. So, and I said, like, you guys, you got to get together and have a meeting and straighten this out, because we can't go along with this. We've got to stop this, at least here in our community. And nothing happened. And then the kids went back to school, and it was really, really hot that fall. And the school is right across from the post office. And it's only an elementary school, 1 to 6, kindergarten to 6, I guess. And they had the 2 older grades, grade 5 and grade 6s. If they wanted to be outside and do something else than just walk around socially distanced, then they had to wear masks. And the kids chose to play soccer and wear masks while they played soccer. And I was like, it's not even a thing. Like, nowhere in the health orders did it say that you had to wear a mask outside. And it definitely said that you shouldn't wear them during physical, like energy or like exercising or anything like that. Like it literally said that. And I was like, so where is this? Where are they doing? How can they do this to the kids? So then I looked up the public health orders, and then I looked up the Wetaskiwin County School Board public policy or whatever they thought they were doing. And the school could make the shit up as they went along, just like the corporations could. Everybody was able to just make the public health orders was the minimum, and corporations and whoever was figured they were in charge could just make it up as they go along. And I wasn't going to stand for that. You follow the fucking public health orders, but you don't get to go over and above them because you're going to save the fucking world. That's not what you get to do. So I sent a letter, and I sent an express post to the school, and I explained to them that what they were doing wrong. I explained that they are children may not know what hypocrisy is. They may not know the word, but they damn sure know what it is when they're looking at it. I know this because I remember thinking it when I was a kid. Everybody can remember thinking, oh, these people are hypocrites. And then it just becomes ingrained and goes along. People keep lying to themselves. They keep lying to their kids. Santa Claus is not a thing. And they just keep lying and lying and lying. And then it just goes on generation after generation. Nothing ever changes. People die. They become saints. You can't mention their mistakes anymore once they're dead. So that just keeps going on and on. And I told them that they had to at least try and control themselves before they tried controlling others. And they weren't practicing control of themselves because they didn't follow the public health orders, and nobody has to wear a mask outside for any reason at all. And then so the principal from the school called me up to the post office to tell me what my job as a federal worker, government worker was, and that there was going to come a time where I was going to have to put a mask on and comply and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, not a fucking chance, because I know these people. Not a chance. Am I going to take part in that? And then finally, in September, another thing that happened in September, and this is probably what got me into the most trouble with Canada Post, was that in September, Canada Post head office sent out this a pesticide. It was called Rediquat. And they sent it to every post office for the purpose of hard surface cleaning. This was a pesticide that it didn't have any WMS markings on it, didn't have any TDG markings on it. There was no French on it. And just at my post office, I got a box of 6 1-liter bottles in a one-person post office. So I'm assuming for the larger post offices, they got bigger shipments for their cleaning. There was no MSDS. I was provided with no MSDS for it. I have experience in pesticide and herbicide application. And I knew that I didn't have the training or anything else to the PPE to handle this toxin. It was like, and I'm really sensitive to chemicals anyway, so I wasn't going to use it. But I did write an email to my supervisor and his supervisor and the union rep, and I said, what is this stuff that you guys are sending out and expecting people to use? It's like, it's poison. Where's the hazmat suit? What are you doing? Right? Oh, you could. But the letter that came before that from head office said, you can't send it back to head office. It came in the mail, mind you. Came through the mail delivery system. which is a violation of the Canada Post Corporation Act, because you can't distribute that kind of stuff through the mail. So it was lethally toxin to every living organism on Earth. It wasn't to be thrown like waste from it, like paper towel or whatever, shouldn't be put in the garbage. It should go to the proper biohazard. Like, it's like, what? Why are you giving us this stuff? You did gloves and mask and all this shit, and didn't have any of it. And I was like, what are you doing? Anyways, went along, and then November came, and we got the message, we got the letter, the memo through Canada Post messaging system that, okay, now we have this. There's one sheet of paper, and on it, it described it as a face, and they literally used these words: a face covering policy, a face covering practice, a face covering requirement. And I was like, well, which one? Which one do we have to comply with? And nobody had an answer. I wasn't going to do it. I refused to do it. I wasn't, because I have a thing. Everybody should be afraid of, like, have a suffocation. Everybody should be afraid of suffocation. That's all I got to say about that. It's not a mental disorder. Everybody should be afraid of being choked off. So, and I certainly don't like anything on my face. I really have a problem with that. And I learned that taking an H2S course, learning to put on the gas, the oxygen mask. And so they insisted that this had to happen. So then I put up all the signs. I was told that we had to enforce it. On this piece of the sheet of paper, it said that it was up to us to enforce the customers, because this was a mandate that was for the Canada Post customers as well. And I was like, you can't do that. And it even said in there, and enforcing this on your customers may be a human rights, a violation of your customers' human rights. And I was like, oh, fuck, it's a customer. I'm a Canada Post customer. That's me too, then. Because all people in Canada are Canada Post customers. So I didn't wear my mask, and I didn't enforce it. And some people were kind of offended that I wouldn't enforce it. And I was like, well, I don't have the right to enforce that. I don't.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Are we talking about the mask just for the application of that solution on the countertops, the pesticide, or just the mask in general?
Just the mask in general, because they didn't give me the proper mask for the poison. They just sent these masks from China for us to wear that said this is not a medical mask, and there was no friendship written on those either. Like, what happened to this French labeling shit that we have to been putting up with for all of our lives? All of that was thrown out the door when COVID came. Oh, that doesn't apply. These Ready Quat came into the country on emergency youth authorization with like hundreds of other poisonous, not approved in Canada for use. Like, so then I refused the mask. And I was still pissed off about the kids out because every day I went to work, post office opened at 10 o'clock, so the kids were out there for their first recess. And every day they played soccer. Right through it, they were still playing soccer out there with these masks on. Every day I went there, every day I looked at it, I got madder, and I got madder and madder, because I knew it was not a thing. And nobody was following the orders, right? But they're not following them. And so then on Christmas Eve 2020, I get a phone call from my supervisor, who says, Laureen, are you wearing your mask? And I said, I don't have a mask. And he said, I gave you masks. I said, I don't care. I don't want them. They're not mine. I'm not going to wear them. I got a thing. I'm not going to wear those. Well, Lorraine, you have to wear your mask, or if you don't wear your mask, then I'm going to have to suspend you. And I was like, well, okay, send it to me in writing. Then if you're suspending me, then send it to me in writing. And then I broke for Christmas. That was at about like just before I left work on the 24th. So like that was my Merry fucking Christmas there. And then the 29th, I went back to work. First thing in the morning, I get a phone call from my union rep who asked me, Lorraine, are you wearing your mask? I said, I don't have a mask. I don't have a mask. You got a provided mask. I said, I'm not going to wear those because I'm not going to wear them. I'm not going to play with your, I got a thing. I have a fear of suffocation. I don't like shit on my face. I'm not, oh, well, she said, well, if you don't do it, you're going to get suspended. I said, yeah, I know. That's what Scott told me yesterday. So she said, and what did you tell him? I said, well, send me writing. So she said, well, you got it. It's in your mailbox. Look in your Canada Post mailbox. There, your suspension letter's there. And I was like, okay. So I printed it off. And I said, so what do I do now? And she said, you're going to have to, well, you can't work without a mask. And you've been suspended. So you're going to have to leave the post office. And I was like, okay. And I said, I have a whole bunch of personal belongings in the post office because I wasn't an actual postmaster. I was in a temporary position. So I'd been there for 20 months or something like that. So she said, well, take all your personal belongings out of there and then close up the post office. And I was like, okay. But taking my personal belongings out of the post office meant I had to take screws out of the walls, and I took it all. So I took all of my office equipment, anything that I put in there, I took it all, and it just left the post office in an absolute mess. And I didn't care. And my union rep said, do you have someone to work for you? And I was like, I don't have to look for someone to work for me. I got to spend it. That's Scott's problem. It's not mine. And so then I left the post office. And before I left, I took my key to the post office and I dropped it in the mail drop because I'm suspended. I'm not going to be responsible for the piece of shit. I'm not going to do that. So I left the keys in there and I went home because anybody that would, there was two other people who had keys to that post office. One was the term for the post office, term employee, and then the actual postmaster for the post office who was on leave, 3-year leave or whatever. She had a key also, and I had already had a discussion with my supervisors about her having a key because she could walk in anytime, and I was like, yeah, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that because I'm supposed to be taking care of the place. It's my responsibility. I'm not okay with her having a key. So that was the 29th. So that meant the post office didn't get closed up. As I was packing my things up and putting my stuff in the car, the RSMC who brings the mail load to the post office came, and I opened up the door, and she said, and I said to her, yeah, no mail here today. She said, yeah, I know, I'm just here to put this sign on the door. And there was a sign made up that, like, a post office down the street, down the highway, already knew I was suspended before I was. But they can't do that. That's not allowed. So she hung it on the door. It says, due to unforeseen circumstances, the post office will be closed until January 4th or something like that. You can't, also a violation of the Canada Post Corporation Act, can't close a post office without formal, like, prior warning, unless it's an absolute emergency. Can't close the post office. So it's called abandonment of mail is what it's called. So is refusing service at a post office. That's also considered to be abandonment of mail. So for anybody who has ever refused service at the post office because you didn't wear a mask,
I didn't know that.
I've been telling people for 4 fucking years now, but no, they can't do it. They can never refuse you service unless you go in screaming and you're threatening them, or like they can't refuse your mail. They can't. They have to make
So
sure.
let me ask you a question. You mentioned your union. Do you think your union did the right thing, or do you believe that they didn't represent you?
Well, if you look up the definition of racketeering, that's a union. So they didn't do anything for me because I was a term employee. I wasn't in a contract with Canada Post. I had no contract. I was a term employee. And so there was nothing that they could do for me. And they even
Sorry,
told me,
sorry. What is a term employee?
well, on call. You're not guaranteed any work. That you're just on an on-call basis. And so if somebody didn't show up, then you get called, can you come in and fill this position?
Do you still have to pay union dues as a term employee?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're still supposed to be protected by your union.
Yeah. Yeah. Still, and then so as a term employee, you can if you can imagine, if you can corporate racketeering. So, so as a term employee, if you're in a position like quite often, say a postmaster or a senior assistant or a part-time will go on leave for some reason, whatever. So they'll put a term in that place. And so then in that position. So if a term employee gets has to work 1 day in 7 for 6 months, and then they can get continuous term status, which gives them more union protection or union whatever it is. So I managed to get continuous status. But so then when the working in Millet, which is I don't know, hour and 15 minutes away from my home, is where I was driving all over the place. Like the first 2 years I was with Canada Post, I put 210,000 clicks on my car, just keeping myself working every day. I'm not
At these outrageous gas prices, how could you afford that?
because I had to work, right? But that was in like 2015, 2016, I guess, or no, 2016 is when I hired on. And so I did my first shift in the fall of 2016. And it was just shortly before that when I realized how much lying was going on in government and in news, because I had always kind of worked in the gas industry, and I knew that oil and gas at the pump, or gas at the pumps, was always relative to the cost of oil per barrel. And all of a sudden, when they put the axe on the oil in Alberta, or I just say in Alberta because that's where it happened to me, and the gas prices didn't go down. The story on the news was, well, the reason that the gas prices can't go down, because being that the oil fell out of, like, per barrel the bottom fell out of that, was because gas and oil was now being considered a commodity. And I was like, that's not right. what made it a commodity? So we went along with that. And then one day I was listening about 2017. I think that the price of oil was going up a little bit more. And I was like, people were wondering why the price of gas was going up pumps, and on the radio, on the news, I heard, well, the reason it's going up is because the price of oil per barrel went up. And I was like, oh, you fucking liars. And that's when I quit listening to the news, because it was like, well, it's either a commodity or it's price per barrel, but they just make it up as they go along. So anyways, that's a sidetrack there. But yeah, 210,000 clicks in the first 2 years. And then the postmaster here in Flats had a tragedy in her life, so she went on leave. And so because I had continuous status, I was able to contact my supervisor and say, I want that position until she comes back. And he said, okay, it's yours. And so that's how I got into my post office, which is like a minute away from my home. A minute, truly, right? So and that's how I got in that post office. And I was working all by myself. Like there was no reason ever for me to wear a mask there. None whatsoever. I fabricated the super shield that they sent. That, what is that? Plexiglass thing that they sent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug Ford. And for the stickers.
On the ground, you mean the 6 feet apart stickers?
All the stickers. Yeah. He's got a sticker company or something anyway.
So I have a question to tie into that. So earlier on, you alluded to how when you were a kid growing up, you were free. You just go out, come back whenever you want. Do you think something like this, and I don't know how old you are, but when you were a kid in that era, do you think something like this could have ever been acceptable by the population? Why or why not?
Well, I'm going to be 60 next month. And, we got the measles, the chicken pox, everybody, all the kids did. It was like, I don't know. So no, I don't think it could have happened. I truly don't. I don't think people, I don't know, because I don't know, but I do remember that growing up, it wasn't until like I went to school where I started, oh, he's got germs. He got germs. I guess nobody knew what germs were till they went to school. And then, that kid's got cooties. I was the kid with the cooties, by the way. So fucking, or whatever. Nobody wanted to play with in a Catholic school. Yeah, I'm getting natural law there. And so I just figured out that I felt free. I don't know. I could. So there was a quarter section of bush kind of in the hamlet where I grew up, and it was all pretty much bush around us. So, but I used to play in that bush. I ran through that bush from one end of the community to the other on paths that horses were made, and every kid in Violet Grove knew how to get through that bush on those paths without ever, like, you just knew where you were going.
There was no Google Maps.
No, and no one ever, like sometimes we could be like 2-3 miles away from home if you had on the road, like cross country. We just went wherever we wanted to go. We were always in a crowd. There was always bigger kids, little kids. The bigger kids had to watch out for the little kids. Maybe the little kids learned a lot more from the bigger kids than they should have, but everybody took care of everybody. It's like, we wore the same clothes. Clothes got handed down from the neighbors' kids. Then they got handed back to that next kid. It was like, so no, I don't think this whole, yeah, disinfect your clothes thing would, and your groceries. No, I don't believe that. We ate carrots right out of the garden. That's how we fed ourselves in the daytime. We raided our own gardens and ate berries, and you got breakfast in the morning and supper at nighttime. And lunch that was not a thing. Like wintertime maybe, but even in the wintertime, we spent most of our time outside. It's bizarre, this world that we live in now. But we were allowed to play with, we had pocket knives. Every kid had a pocket knife, but you couldn't know how to make fires. It's bizarre, but kids don't know anymore. Nobody has any life skills. That's really scary to me. But yeah, but it's really changed. This this constant surveillance that we're under all the time. Cameras everywhere. Everything we do, every place we go, all of our business transactions, everything. If you use your bank card, everything's been traced. But we can't find the bad guys. I don't get it. Like, how come the criminals can't be? It's all on camera, right? And if it's like, why isn't all this information? They're collecting all this medical information, but get into an emergency and nobody looks at the shit. Nobody looks at it to see your medical history to save your life. They don't look there. It's like, why are all of our phone calls being recorded by Bell Mobility? Like, I was assaulted by a peace officer, had my arm dislocated. I had my husband on the phone at the time. I wanted the recording of that phone call. I can't get it. We've been paying for that account for 20 fucking years. Why can't I get that information? A police person, like there's such a thing, or an attorney can get that information, can get a recording of that phone call, me screaming for my husband's help while he's on a grader 100 kilometers away, and I can't get a copy of that recording. How fucking bizarre is that?
I'm going to pick up on a couple things you said. Grown-up kids taking care of the little kids. You're growing your own food. You raid your own garden. Hand-me-downs. You take care of yourself. People making fires, and then you also mentioned transactions. Like, they're monitoring. That really bothers me. They're monitoring every single dollar that we spend. Would you say that a big part of this problem is the loss of the sovereignty of the individual? Like, we're becoming reliant on government?
Well, the thing about sovereignty is a state of mind. And sovereignty, a lot of the problem in the world today that I see is ignorance. And it's always been ignorance as to why people can be controlled. Ignorance as in lack of education. Like, the average reading comprehension level of people between the ages of 16 and grade 6. So if nobody can read and nobody can write, nobody can then that's a killing field. Then the absolute tyranny can exist because people, they say that our rights come to us on this. There's people who write our rights for us. And I don't believe that anybody can write my rights. I was born with the same rights under God as Charles fucking Windsor was. And that's an AKA. I have no respect, not 1 ounce, for the crown. They're known to be associated with pedophiles. They've been charged with pedophile never been found guilty of pedophilia. There's no good reason. I don't care whether the paper is correct or current or legal or whatever. And no one has any reason to, no moral obligation to be under their rule any longer. And any politician, anyone who is going to swear their allegiance or affirm their allegiance to that has no authority over me. They think that they swear that their sovereignty and their right to the land and their right to rule and their rights all come from God. Now, I'm not a Christian. I've never claimed to be a Christian. I grow a garden, so I inherently know God is real. I have a soul. God is real. You can call, I don't, natural law. Anyways, it's bizarre that they would, all of this would be done like kings and queens and everything, that they would claim that it's their right under God to do so, but deny others that same right, that same right under God. And so, yeah, you go into a court, you go into any government office, you go into, I don't know, they say the Lord's Prayer in Parliament. I think on Wednesdays they do that. Well, how does that work? Like, how did they get away with claiming like Carter starts off with, whereas Canada is founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And then there's a colon. So if you find out what a colon is, colon says, well, you know, it can be, if there's a list to follow, then that list has to satisfy the previous statement. Well, there's nothing that comes after that, written after that. People, oh, the first whatever clause or whatever. Well, it doesn't matter what's written after that. Anything that's written after that has to satisfy that statement, that previous statement. And if it doesn't, then it's just legalese bullshit. I call it word fuckery. I've been looking at it. It's terrible. It's terrible. Legalese is I can't believe people take part in that. I truly can't. It's bizarre. And an illiterate people that are like mostly illiterate anyways, like my husband, for instance, grade 8, because people that work with their hands, the people that are like trades people like me, that we don't have any place in school. They don't look for that in children in school. They're putting out factory workers. That was the intent of public school, was factory workers. So any kid who doesn't perform and generally tradespeople can only learn what they really want to learn. I know that's how I am. So lots of kids get left out. And I know when my daughter was going to school, she's about your age, Payman, there was this thing that came about that was called the social pass. And I was like, well, what's a social pass? That was bizarre. What's a social pass? Well, it's, in special circumstances, if they think the kid's going to do better, if they can be pushed into the next grade with their friends, well, then they get to go ahead. How many people got through school on a social pass? How many people in government today got through school on a social pass?
I would say all of them.
Right? So we have these laws. We got all these laws. This king everybody's swearing, like, well, the king and the
So
king. Go
we're
ahead.
almost we're at the 50-minute mark. We're almost going to wrap it up. I wanted to ask you this is basically the main reason I wanted to bring you on. If you were God for one day, or if you had a magic wand, how would you reimagine Canada? Like, would removing the crown, the monarch, would that be enough? Would you what would you change? Like First Amendment rights, second?
Well, the crown definitely is a problem in our country because it's not, none of it. Everybody says, well, this is all legal. Well, legal is a problem in itself. Legalese is a problem. You're expecting a mostly illiterate people to abide um, by this legal system. They say that there's ignorance of the law is no excuse or no defense, but it's not possible for anyone. I don't care. You would have to be a legal savant to know all the laws so that you didn't break them, because it's 55,000 of them or something like that in Canada. So it can't be that to ignorance of the law. So therefore, if there's a Bible, as far as I'm concerned, if there's a Bible in a courtroom, then that's your source document. That's the law that you can't be ignorant of. And if Canada is recognized on the supremacy of God, well, then that's what has to be recognized as the law, as the supreme law. Because it was men who wrote all of this anything after that. And I even question the Bible because there's like 27 versions of the Bible. But it's so bizarre. But if they're going to keep on this charade and this pretend that they're doing everything in God's name, and like, so so
What about property rights? Do you think that we should have absolute property rights enshrined in the Constitution, the Charter?
well, we all deserve a home. Everyone has the right to a home. And if your home is sitting upon some land, then okay, let me put this differently. Why? Like, I know that no one can own the land. This is not possible. No one can actually own land because you're going to die and you can't own it. No one can own it. But there's this concept that the crown owns the land and the crown can take it back. Well, how can the crown own the land? Who gave it to the crown? God gave it to the crown. It's like, no, that's not right. The crowns, these royal families went across the world claiming
The divine right of kings?
right? So that if there was like heathens living on the land that weren't Christians, then they could take that land. They called it a lodial title, right? If land's not occupied and we come across it, then, but they didn't consider the people, the natural people that living on the land there as people. They were considered something less than people because they were Christian. So where do they get off? Like, they don't it's all bizarre. Well, God said we could. No, God didn't give you anything. And if God gave it to you, then prove it. Give me your piece of paper that from God that says, I give this land to the crown. That doesn't exist. Because everything is legal. They say everything is legal. It's all done legally. Well, nothing is done legally. It's fiction. Legal is absolute fiction. Everybody, even the people that work in the world of legal, know that they act as a legal fiction when they're doing their job, and then they go home at nighttime and then they are someone else. It's like a mental disorder that they have. They actually believe that they're, yeah, well, that's a legal fiction. I'm about that when I go home. it's mind-boggling the way that it's working. You can't. It's commerce law and human. The word human is also another word that is it's a weapon. It's a legal weapon, and it should. Much of what is happening in the world today against people and upon people couldn't even happen if that legal definition of human didn't exist. And you can call it human rights commissioners. Like I talked to one here in Alberta, a human rights officer, and I said, can you give me another definition? Because the theory of evolution says I'm a descendant of ape, and then there's this legal definition that says I'm a human slave. So give me something else. She said, well, you'd have to go to court, or I don't know, you have to go to court to see that definition. And I'm like, well, then there's nothing. You guys are nothing. You're just a problem. You didn't even exist until after the Second World War. Like, they're not doing.
I'm in Whistler, British Columbia, and I walk around a lot on snowy nights. I'm just thinking, like everywhere I look now, I see the hand of government. So I walk past this resort, and there's probably thousands of rules that government puts on that resort as a business. I walk up to the base of the mountain. You can't drink outside. I mean, some of these things are good, but like you can't urinate outside. You can't set up a lemonade stand outside. Like there's so many laws, and I feel we've lost something. Like it's not about the people anymore. It's about the government.
But that's the thing, Payment. They're not laws. They're just acts and statutes, and it's just people just power tripping on other people. Government couldn't do it. Corporations, it's all just people making it happen. So maybe there's too many power trippers in government. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I think that the legal system needs to be overhauled. It can be much easier. If that corporate world wants to operate in a phantom legal fiction realm, let them do that. But the people have no court. The people have no justice. Like people they say, we have a civic duty to vote, and on and on. But there's also a civil duty that people have. And our civil duty is to ensure that the laws, whether these people have been voted in or not, it's still our duty to make sure that they do their job. But our ability to make that happen, we aren't allowed our civil duty. So there's no place for us. And I'm like, but it's not just us. It's like the people that work in government. They do this to themselves. They enforce this shit. They go along with it. Like I said, they most likely don't read. So they just sign their names. And that's the only thing, by the way, that creates money is people's signature. People say, well, it's not backed by anything. Sure it is. It's backed by your signature. It's backed by your blood. It's backed by your ability to pay it back.
So you mentioned that, I said these laws, there's too many laws. You said they're not even laws. What would be a law, like a legitimate law? Would it be that a mother and a father have jurisdiction over their child? Is that like a natural law?
Thou shalt not kill.
All right.
Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not covet. They're so basic. If you're outside and you really have to pee and no one's going to let you use the bathroom, then you need to fucking pee somewhere, don't you? Or stand there and piss your pants. You should be allowed to go outside. Now, if nobody's looking and it's necessary, I should be able to go and pee behind a tree. I should be able to do that. Yeah, maybe it's not correct in public, but maybe there should be some public washrooms for people to use. And and so it's so bizarre. They just make shit up. The gender dysphoria is not a thing. It was a gender disorder, was a mental disorder until 2013 when the definition of it changed in the DSM-5. And dysphoria is no child was ever born that way. Deeply sad and unhappy. That's not real. No discontent. Babies aren't born that way. That's a fucking lie. And they need to quit doing that. And anti-hate network.
Yeah, don't get me started on them.
Yeah. They're so evil that I can't believe that our government listens to that.
It's not that they listen to it. The government is the one that's talking through them. They're funding them. It's the PR arm of the government.
Right? What a disgrace. That's a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Like, why do we have to pay for it? We don't even have any choice. They reach right into your account. Take the money. But you're going to pay for it. It's like me being locked up under the Mental Health Act, right? That was all on believed it to be true at the time. What?
Oh, wait, you fell victim to the Mental Health Act?
Twice. Once
Man.
it was breached, and once you have that on you, anytime they hear your name, they're trying to lock you back up.
So I've had Kirk Reese on. He's a whistleblower from La Ronge, Saskatchewan. They used the BC Mental Health Act to detain him and drug him. Dale Richardson of Alberta, he's another guest I've had on, and they used some version of the Mental Health Act to say they're abusing the Mental Health Act to attack citizens.
Yes, and in 2019, here in Alberta, it was found, a judge named Christina Eidsvik had found that the Mental Health Act had been breached. 5 or 6 counts for this man and his constitutional rights, his civil liberties were violated. And what happened to this man was he was a victim of a hit and run. He needed surgery on his leg. The first surgery went bad, and it was a long time getting back for a second surgery. And while he was waiting, so he didn't have any income and everything else. And then while he was in the hospital for a second surgery, he became homeless. So then they just formed him, and they kept him there for 9 months, drugging him, and there was nothing wrong with that man. I was drooling.
This is crazy. I'm sorry. I get really angry with this. This isn't even this. They're making a profit off of selling these drugs. I'm talking about the government. Then they make a profit off of treating the people that they get addicted. And then when that doesn't work, they make a profit off of killing the guy made. So they have the full pipeline.
They actually attempted to make me.
Jesus.
Because do you know what my midazolam is?
Sorry?
Midazolam is the euthanasia drug. They mix it with opioids, and that's how they kill. That's the kill drug that they use for the maid. And when they had me in an ambulance, and I was from the time, let's say 4:30 in the afternoon till 1:30 in the morning, they had given me 3 doses of midazolam, and on top of a bunch of other drugs that they had given me. So I've been through my records, all the records, and I have no doubt in my mind that they had full intentions of, if they could, because they had already said that I had homicidal, suicidal, I was very violent. I had these homicidal and suicidal ideations, and I was like a victim of domestic abuse, or maybe I was the abuser. I don't know. It wasn't really clear, but being that I'm a living kidney donor, and I have been, like 2006 is when I gave my sister a kidney. But in 2016, applied, like I consented to being an organ donor upon my death, if right, because I really thought highly of the whole concept of organ donating. I'm not so cool with that anymore, but uh, I truly believe, because I'm a healthy woman. I might be old, but I'm not on any medications. I don't take any medications, so there was nothing wrong with me physically. And they did a CAT scan on me, and like to make sure that I was healthy up nose to toes. And I believe that they were going to, if they could have killed me, they would have tried harvesting my organs, because I signed up.
Oh, I stand corrected. The pipeline doesn't just end with death; they also profit off the harvesting of your
1.2
organs.
million in parts. It's fucking disgusting. They harvest blood. They sell blood on the stock market. It's, it's bizarre, and it goes on. In Alberta, to get a driver's license, you have to opt out of the organ harvest. They just
It should
they
be the other way around. Yeah, no, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This is all right. Well, we've actually gone over time. Can you? I know you have a social media handle. I don't know if you want to share it, but is there anywhere where people can learn more about you or not?
So on Rumble, I'm one more godless woman. That's with a small g, meaning I only, small g being government God. I don't have that, but yeah. So, but I don't I, don't, I just I go. I'm on Liberty. I just go by Laureen on Liberty, and I'm Laureen on YouTube, 17 something. But I don't really say. I just make comments. I just comment to people, and I chat and comments, because I I think I have something to say that other people don't say, and I really think that people need to start repeating it. We are not we are not humans. They can't do this to us if we refuse that fucking legal term. It's terrible. We're not monkeys. We're not human slaves. It's terrible. I don't. You can't, like this. Well, you can only get out of the. You have to prove true religious whatever to get out of the vaccine. Well, who's the religious specialist?
Justin Trudeau, evidently. Yeah.
Like who gets to pass judgment on my soul? Who are these people? Like, there's me, God get to pass judgment on my soul. That's it. No one else. And if someone's telling me to do something that I feel that will taint my soul, they can fuck off and die. That's all I have to say. Do not taint my soul with your crap.
I guess we can end the show on that note. F off and die. This episode's been dedicated to the government of Canada.
I love y'all.
Uh,
I love my people.
Mrs. LeClerc, I wanted to thank you very much for coming on. Um, I think we probably have to do another follow-up episode at some point to pick up where we left off. But it was a very interesting episode. Thank you very much.
Blah, blah, blah. Have a good one, Payman.
Take care.
I do go on.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Have a wonderful day. And have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.